Looking for a fun, different new shirt? Something related to the things you like? Climbing in the outdoors, perhaps philosophy? Visit our new store, The Dihedral Goods, on Etsy, and you'll find all that and much more.
I'm on! Roll! Hello, everyone. This is Carrot, welcoming you to another episode of the Dihedral Podcast. We're so excited to be joined by today's guest, Dr. Roman Yampolskiy. Dr. Yampolskiy is a published author with over 100 academic papers and numerous books to his name, including Artificial Superintelligence, A Futuristic Approach, and AI, Unexplainable, Unpredictable, Uncontrollable. He has presented his work all over the world, including testimony in the legislature. Dr. Yampolskiy has been cited literally thousands of times in various academic journals, books, and articles. In addition to his writing, Yampolskiy is a tenured professor in the Department of Computer Engineering and Computer Science at the Speed School of Engineering at the University of Louisville. He's also the founding and current director of the Cybersecurity Lab. Dr. Yampolskiy, I couldn't be more thrilled to be talking to you today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, of course. I actually just finished AI, Unexplainable, Unpredictable, and Uncontrollable. And for anybody looking for a way to catch up quickly on some of the most pressing issues surrounding the advancement of AI, this book is an absolute must. And so that being said, I was thinking we could give the listeners a primer on some of the main issues regarding what some people refer to as the coming wave. And so to start, Dr. Yampolskiy, would you be okay explaining the difference between generative AI, AGI, human-level artificial intelligence, and superintelligence?
Sure. So historically, field of AI was all about trying to automate what people do in terms of physical or cognitive labor. It didn't work out really well in the 50s, 60s, was a challenging problem. So they started working on narrow problems. Computer only plays chess, nothing else. Computer only tries to translate text. The dream always was a general system. So that's AGI, Artificial General Intelligence, a system capable of learning across multiple domains, performing as well as a human. Humans are not general. We are general in the domain of human expertise. That's human level, but we don't know how to speak dog language or something like that. And then if you succeed in building AGI and you have access to internet, you have perfect memory, you start doing better than average. You become super capable in all those domains. So superintelligence is a system which outcompetes all people in all domains, including science and engineering.
Okay. And what would be a human-level artificial intelligence?
So someone who you can treat, you would treat the way your assistant is expected to perform. You can tell them, purchase this item for me, write this letter for me. Anything a human being should be able to accomplish, that system would have no problems with.
So just to be clear, we're kind of saying that humans don't actually have artificial general intelligence. I mean, they don't have general intelligence is more the point to make. We might be closer to being good at a thing, but not at least at a human level in every other thing that exists, which is something that an artificial intelligence could potentially attain.
Right, and I guess both of us are kind of in a bubble. We're in academia, everyone we know has at least a PhD, so it's a very unusual sample of humans. Most people cannot even do that level of performance.
Right. And then generally when people hear AI, they think of generative AI. Would you consider generative AI even an example of artificial intelligence?
Well, certainly. I don't think it's a necessary definition. The fact that it generates output is kind of a given. Any AI system would produce text and possibly be able to generate art and music. So this is just a property of having systems of that capability. I wouldn't put it into a separate category.
Okay, great. So concerning artificial intelligence in academia, professors worry about plagiarism. In politics, politicians seem to worry about deepfakes. In society, of course, citizens worry about jobs. And I do think these are pressing concerns that maybe we can come back and talk about. But I think we should be focusing, generally our attention more on AI safety in the bigger picture. So, namely two specific things, the alignment problem and the control problem. Can you tell us what these are? And then we can talk about why they're so problematic.
Right. So people worry about problems they see today. They already have somebody maybe losing jobs to AI. Plagiarism is certainly a huge problem in academia. Deep fakes are showing up, so they may impact elections, but fewer people look at what happens if progress in AI continues at the same level. What do we get in 2 years, 5 years? If we are correct in our predictions and we do get to beyond human performance, then those are kind of trivial issues. We are more concerned about how do we control those systems? How do we make sure they are safe in terms of existential risks? If they control nuclear response, if they are capable of nanotech development, synthetic biology, there are much bigger risks than just, a student plagiarizing an essay. And that topic is usually not addressed because very few people think about the future. And even if they do, there is not much they can do about it.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I want to dig deeper into this control problem. Like you mentioned a couple things like nanotechnology and having access to nuclear codes. This is truly an existential risk. If there's a super intelligence, we don't really have the predictability to say what or how this thing would function. And so in terms of existence, it's possible that all bets are off. Is that true?
Right, so we can't really know what a smarter system would do. By definition, it's capable of coming up with approaches, ways to accomplish its goals we cannot consider. And so you asked about what is value alignment. That's our hope that it would still prefer to do things we care about and like to do. So kind of by definition, it's already on Team Human. It has a pro-human bias. And so even if we are not directly controlling it with specific orders, it's by default kind of not doing really terrible things to us.
Yeah, and you've written and talked about in other places concerning the alignment problem. First of all, I'm not sure that humans are perfectly aligned with one another. In philosophy, when we talk about ethics, we've been talking about this for 3,000 years, and we haven't settled on, oh, this is right, or this is good, or this has value, or this doesn't have value. And so the expectation that not only can we come to an agreement amongst ourselves to be able to translate that into a way that an artificial intelligence would be able to operate is maybe unlikely. And so there's scenarios where we're just like, all right, at all costs, make sure you protect human welfare or make sure that humans are happy. But even a command like make humans happy could have really negative effects. Can you talk about that?
All right, so we don't really agree on what happiness means. Different societies have very different levels of permissibility in terms of family structure or health practices, drug use, all sorts of differences which we haven't really agreed on across one country or obviously across multiple cultures, religions. So when we talk about value alignment, we don't really have a specific set of values already kind of agreed on, written out. We don't know how to program in those, even if we did, in terms of specific programming languages. So there is a lot of basically challenges in terms of this problem is ill-defined. We don't know how to actually do it at the level of humans. You correctly stated most humans are not value aligned with others. And even if we had that set of rules in some static form, we don't know how to program it in. And if we did that, values tend to drift. They change with time.
Right.
Human values of 200 years ago would be unacceptable today. So we need to make it where it kind of keeps updating and learning without violating our preferences.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And those are the types of things that are impossible to say 200 years ago. If somebody tried to predict what our values would be today, they just wouldn't be able to do that. And so it's possible we get caught into this loop of the 21st century for the rest of human existence. And that might be a best case scenario.
Right, so that's challenging, and we kind of experimentally discover those. So we may have a change in policy, and then a decade later we go, okay, we didn't really like this, let's undo this, go back. So
Yeah.
how do you encode those capabilities?
So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about best and worst case scenarios. If we don't solve the control problem and just kind of wantonly keep developing what we're developing in the direction that we are, what are some of the scenarios that we might not want to look forward to, but could be coming our way, and in both the best and worst cases?
So existential risks are risks of either a lot of people dying, or there is a significant damage to our capabilities, freedom, culture. So society kind of stagnates, and you don't have the same options you had before. It's not obvious what a typical person can contribute to superintelligence. So in terms of employment, you may be completely not requested in any occupation, so not just specific fields, but just all jobs are kind of gone. Changes in political structure, social structure, and the best outcome is we only create systems which are useful tools, and they help us with scientific research, they help us with productivity, so there is a lot of abundance, we have a lot of wealth, so typical problems, poverty, homelessness, are trivially solved with that extra wealth.
Right. Okay. Superintelligence seems unfathomable to me. Like, we've seen this example of, like, think of an earthworm to a human, right? We might be comparable. Do you have any way to speak about this? We might be completely dependent on metaphors and analogy, but how would you compare our intelligence to what a super intelligence would be capable of?
Well, it would feel very godlike, I guess. It will be all-knowing, all capable within, physical framework. So just someone with skills in every area, perfect knowledge, perfect memory, extremely fast. Not sure, we just don't have experience with something like that. But if you look at how it performs in narrow domains, try playing chess against the best computer. You
Yeah.
have no chance, right? It just dominates you so quickly, so perfectly, but same level of capability in other domains.
Yeah, that at least it sounds intimidating, right? Humans have had this hierarchical position on, like, in the animal kingdom for a very, very long time, and I'm not sure most of us could really imagine a place where we're no longer at the top of the food chain. Um, there's this idea between the difference between kind of a fast versus a slow takeoff if we approach super intelligence. Could you talk to us a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, people are not sure how long it will take to switch from kind of the tools we have today to this completely different paradigm of an agent, independent entity with more capabilities. Some say it's going to be a gradual process, will take decades, will slowly get more capable. Other people are saying, well, once they hit certain level of capability, they'll enter this cycle of self-improvement. So within days, weeks, months, it goes from current level to this godlike capability level. And we do see a lot of prediction markets saying that the timelines until singularity have been expedited. What used to be 20, 30 years, now people are saying 2, 3 years. So it might be shifting towards quick takeoff, fast takeoff.
And not to, like, pin you down, but do you have any thoughts on when you see these things taking off, or would you put yourself in a ring of being like, yeah, within 10 years, within 15, within 2?
It's not something I have precise dates for,
Yeah.
but it does seem like we already have kind of a model which scales well with resources. So in my opinion,
Mhm.
it's no longer how long until that capability, but how much money you need to spend to train a model. So maybe today it's $1 trillion, next year it's 1 billion, and then 1 million. So how quickly do you want to get there?
And these are things, as prices start to drop, we see in technology that they become more available to lots of people. And at least from my point of view, when you drop a price low enough that not maybe the average citizen, but the average government can get their hands on it, it lends me towards thinking about worst case scenarios where we have, maybe like a corporate greed or a military advantage or just bad actors getting their hands on these things. If that happens, is there anything that we can do to stop it?
Well, it depends on what level of capability they're able to get to. If they already have very advanced systems, it's hard to kind of undo that. the good news is they also don't control it. So people often
Right.
say, if we slow down, the Chinese will get there first. But it doesn't matter who develops uncontrolled superintelligence first. If it's uncontrolled, it makes no difference.
Yeah, that's a great point. So, is there anything that you can speak on for just people, for citizens that we should be thinking about, that we should be doing in order to help curb worst case scenarios?
Well, if you can, we usually don't have the choice, but if you can vote for people who have understanding of this technology, understanding of those issues, so I guess somewhat younger people, not 80-year-olds, and they can push for restrictions on doing development of more capable systems, so more general, more AGI-like systems versus narrow AI. That would at least buy us some time. It may still happen long term or in other jurisdictions, but it seems like a good strategy right now to try to restrict how quickly we get there.
Yeah, and this is one of the reasons I really am so grateful for you and people who work in the industry to be able to talk about these things. I mean, I think the first step in order to understanding is to just take some time to learn about it. So yeah, very, very appreciative about that. I want to go back to the book for a second. I really, really loved the unexplainable, unpredictable, and uncontrollable, especially the chapter on skepticism, which is maybe where my thoughts lie philosophically, at least. But I want to talk about those people who are skeptical that AGI or super intelligence are even remotely possible. And there's some people are just like, that's not going to happen, or that we'll be able to figure out a way to overcome any of these future problems, the control issue or the alignment problem. What do you say to people who just flatly deny that those things are going to happen or even could happen?
So there's a big difference between saying it will take much longer. Someone saying it will be 100 years, 500 years, I can at least conceptually understand where they're coming from. But someone saying it's impossible, given that we see, 8 billion examples of general intelligences, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, for sure. There's writers out there. I think Stuart Russell kind of comes to mind, who has some ideas about how to solve these problems. In the literature, is there a position or idea that you look at and you're like, you know what, that could actually work?
I haven't found anything which would scale to any level of intelligence and allow us to stay in control indefinitely. I think even Stuart Russell's work recently, his paper in Science, talks about our limits on testing those systems, something I published on. I agree completely. I don't think we can even test to see if they're safe or not. Even this fundamental requirement cannot be fulfilled.
That's a great point. And even, there's ideas like just put it in a box, like black box is kind of the word that I've heard being thrown around. It doesn't seem possible to keep a super intelligence in a black box. Would you agree with that, or no?
Right, it was one of the earliest papers I had on how to leak-proof singularity, essentially contain those systems, but still be able to ask them questions, benefit from it. And in the last 2 years, we kind of violated all the expectations of that paper. We connected those systems to the internet, we gave access to all the users, and now we're even open sourcing some of the models. So it's just no longer being deployed in that framework. Even though the framework would fail eventually, at least it was giving us some training environment and time to experiment with those systems.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so let's say we lean closer to a best case scenario than a worst case scenario. Eventually, we face the problem of purpose, or sometimes referred to as the problem of purpose. Is that something you think that we should be taking seriously? And what does that problem entail?
So it is a big problem, but a different type. So we talk about X risks, existential risks, everyone's dead. We can talk
Right.
about S risks, suffering risks, everyone kind of wishes they were dead.
Yeah.
And we wrote about something called I risks, or ikigai, a Japanese concept of having meaning, purpose, usefulness to your life. And
Yeah.
if you have nothing to contribute, that does impact a lot of people's self-worth. If you are right now a professor, an engineer, an artist, this is what makes you who you are. This is how you contribute to the world, how you interact with other people. If all those things are kind of unnecessary and trivially done by this glorified calculator, it really will negatively impact a lot of people. We see in very developed societies where basic needs are met. You're not hungry, you're not dealing with problems of that type, suicide rates go up. People just don't know what to do with themselves. So we just don't know how impactful that's going to be long term, where we just don't see ourselves as contributing much.
Yeah, I kind of think the same way. And, you know, we see, probably you and I, especially, and people in our position, we see students, you know, we get bored and we filled that time. And of course, there's always something there to fill that time that's not very useful, you know, like scrolling on a screen on social media. And I think as we advance technologies, virtual reality becomes something. Could you envision a future in which we're alive, but in no way living the types of lives that we're living now, with other technologies on the horizon?
Yeah, so I have a paper where I talk about possible solution to the value alignment problem in terms of creating personal virtual universes for every human. So you don't have to kind of negotiate with others and compromise. You can have exactly the world you want. And in that world, you can be homeless, you can be king, whatever kind of entertainment you're into. And I guess you can always just go to other planets, explore, have that type of entertainment experience. That's, I think, going to be a pretty cool possibility for many people.
Which might at least give people the illusion of purpose, or maybe it is purpose. Who really knows?
If it's done really well, you would not be able to tell whatever it's real or virtual, right? You can always kind of make your brain forget you're in a dream, exactly what happens when you're dreaming. So it becomes very real and you still enjoy it fully.
Yeah, there's philosopher Robert Nozick comes up with a story called the experience machine, which is basically now we just kind of plug in and
Right.
bits and bytes. So in Bostrom's latest book, Deep Utopia, there's an attempt to explore this idea of purpose in a solved world. And he shares this quote that I'd love to get your thoughts on. He says, as we look further into the future, any possibility that is not radical is not realistic. And so I was wondering if you could just talk about that quote for a second, if it's meaningful to you, or also why it wouldn't be realistic if it's not radical.
So I'm reading the book right now, and I just started, so I haven't finished it.
Oh crap! I'm sorry.
Excited to
I'm
see.
not going to give away the ending.
I don't mind spoilers.
I won't give away anymore. Just that one quote.
It's fine. I think the point is that if someone 200 years ago tried to predict today's technology, yeah, those would be radical ideas. You have, robots going around, self-driving cars, all of it wouldn't be something they can anticipate. And it's exactly the same if we project forward 100 years, but now with exponential increase in capabilities. And we always had good science fiction, but limited by human writers. So we could never envision this society with super intelligent machines, because you can't write something at a level you are not at yourself.
Yeah.
Whereas now, if we have this super intelligent scientists and engineers, yeah, it will be completely revolutionary, the type of inventions they can come up with.
So I think, people like you are really important for a lot of different reasons. One, the work you've done, but also your ability to think radically. And I'm wondering if you can maybe share with people any tools you have to help us think, not just typically, but more radically about the future.
It helps to take those things seriously. So a lot of times people would consider a possibility, but then assume that nothing else will change. So everything else will be the same, but you now have this somewhat different technology. So if you look at kind of books about the future from 20 years ago, they would have separate chapters. There was a chapter on robots, chapter on AI, chapter on nanotech, but they would not interact in any way.
Right.
So you had super intelligence in the world, but it made no difference to people went to work as cashiers and things like that. It just didn't make sense. So if you take it seriously and go to the end, okay, you have virtual reality capabilities, it's realistic, you can make environments which are no different from real world. What does that mean if you take it to extreme? If you have capability to fully modify human genetic code, make any changes you want, immortality, different types of bodies. Where does that take you? Go as far as you can with those ideas. Don't stop at a comfortable level where like, okay, everything's the same, but we have this new extra tool.
Man, that's such good advice. Thank you for that. We face this in philosophy all the time. It's interesting too, because a lot of times, I look at philosophers from 50, 60 years ago who were getting in trouble by trying to talk about how we can account for the mind through material ways, and just understanding the brain, and they were ostracized. How dare you bring things up like this? And I think we probably face this scrutiny a little bit less, but you're right. Let's think about these things and push them to their extremes. And sometimes we stumble upon something that's correct. So I don't know. I think that's great advice. That being said, as a professor, do you have any thoughts or even radical thoughts on what the future of education might look like?
So I just gave a talk at an education conference, so that was kind of a big question I had to address. We have to make an assumption. We assume that what I'm talking about in my safety work will not happen, so we don't all die in 3 years.
Yeah.
If that's somehow addressed, we have well-controlled, well-behaving machines, then education becomes more personalized, probably virtual environments. Probably you have some sort of an integration of human brain and computer, so you can do direct downloads of new skills and knowledge. And you're not limited to like, this is a skill I want. You can just get all of them. Just
Yeah.
why not? I mean, download all the apps. So I don't see any future for like brick and mortar universities to stick around. Even today, I'm kind of questioning what it is exactly they accomplish with all the resources. Students are paying, $100,000 a year, and they can probably get most of the knowledge on YouTube and with software. So it's really, we're selling this certification. At the end, you get a diploma. Once people realize that's kind of useless and you just need skills, then I don't see what academia has to offer.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to that. And I mean, if we think of a post-labor, a post-work world or something like that, that piece of paper becomes less and less valuable.
Exactly. What would you major in if there is no accounting as a profession? No one's going to become a 4-year accounting major. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I agree. I tend to try to promote this idea that there might be value in the community aspect of education, right? Some young people can go together and share ideas, which, again, thinking into the future, that would be hard to share ideas when you can just like have it. It's a difficult thing to imagine. Obviously, I do hope that community can remain together, but that's probably just short-sightedness on my part.
There are cheaper ways to get together. Go to Burning Man. It's not 100,000 a year.
You're right. It's cheaper than $100,000. That's for sure. All right. So, look, thinking about the future, at least for me, it can be somewhat scary and somewhat depressing at times. And I do think that's the reason why we should continue to do it. But in almost every talk that you're a part of, or every book that you've written or paper that you've written, there's just a series of, like, for me, oh shit moments versus like, oh shit. But I want to shift gears a little bit and maybe talk about some oh nice moments that don't necessarily have anything to do with the future of humanity or artificial intelligence. Just some interesting ideas that we can get from you as a person, about you. And just to the audience, if you look Roman up pretty much anywhere, you're going to see all the great things that he's published, but nobody knows your favorite color. I want to get down to some of those things. I think those are important. There's a human aspect behind this polymath of work. And so anyway, I was hoping you'd be open to answering some more lighthearted questions about yourself.
I can try, but I have no idea what my favorite color is. I don't know how to look it up. Just don't discriminate by color. I don't have preferences. Don't care.
All right, let's see.
I was buying a car and the dealer was like, what color do you want it to be? And I was like, why do I care? I'll be inside.
That's what color is the inside. All right, so we'll see how it goes. When you're done for the day and you've fulfilled all of your family obligations and things like that, do you have any hobbies that don't include thinking about the end of humanity?
Yeah, I play sports. I like football, like real football, not
Yeah, no,
football.
I'm with you. Who's your favorite team?
I don't have a favorite team. I like playing. I don't like watching other teams.
Oh, that's spectacular. All right, so we like football. Anything else? Are you like wood carving or?
I have many dreams of one day having free time to do like hundreds of different hobbies. They all on a to-do list, but I call it my pre-AGI list. And I don't think I have enough time to learn to play guitar, speak French, and
Yeah.
meditate properly. So like none of this is happening.
If
One day.
if things go well for artificial intelligence and you're able to survive into like a post-death world, then maybe all those things will come true. All right, this is an easy one, or maybe not. What's your favorite pizza?
Again, I don't care much. It's fried cheese, so it's not like, yeah.
Tough to mess up.
Sorry, I don't have any of those like standard
That's all right.
preferences.
This is interesting to me. What about pineapple? Would you ever put pineapple on a pizza?
Sure, I couldn't care less. I don't discriminate.
All right. This one's gonna be tough for you, but you got to make a decision. You don't have to, but I hope you can. You got to eliminate one of these things from your life forever. Bread, rice, or pasta.
I can give up all three of them and not even blink. I don't really care about carbs at all.
Good for you, man. You're in really good shape. All right, this one, another one. It doesn't have to be the most, but if there's somebody who's listening who's looking for a place to watch a beautiful sunset or check out a mountain or an ocean, what's one of the most beautiful places that you can recommend to go visit?
It's the same sun, no matter where you're looking at from. So
That might be true.
sunsets are always gorgeous, and it's the only thing with no diminishing returns, as far as I know.
I agree. Go check out the sunset. I talked to a guy a while back who I asked him a similar question. He was just like, look, he gave a different answer. He's like, I was in Cleveland in the 1980s, which I'm not sure if you know much about Cleveland in the 80s, but there was a lot of smog. And he's like, that was the most beautiful sunset in the entire world. The smog did something to bring out the color. So yeah, it might be going down all the place, but we can get different colors in different places. All right. So you teach at University of Louisville, right?
That's right.
Which is in Kentucky. Yeah.
Yes.
What's one of your favorite things about the state of Kentucky?
It's like the best of America. It's real. It's what people, refer to as like real America. It's not cities which are weird outliers which don't represent the country. So
Yeah.
you get to have real life. It's a place which is very affordable, very friendly. I would recommend people check it out. It's not
All right.
just flyover country.
Yeah, for sure. This is probably more for climbers, but there's a place in Kentucky called Red River Gorge. Have you ever heard of it or gone to it?
Yeah, I've been there. It's really nice.
All right, but the sunset there, it's the same as everywhere
It's
else.
the same sun, yeah. We don't
That's true.
discriminate.
So there's this place at Red River Gorge called Miguel's Pizza, which I know we don't care about pizza or pizza toppings, but if I'm ever in Kentucky, I'm giving you a call and I'm going to be like, Roman, we got to go rock climbing in Red River Gorge. Would you be up to something like that?
I don't know about rock climbing. I try to avoid existential risks at personal level as well, but pizza and travel, I like. Yeah, sure.
All right,
Sounds
perfect.
good.
All right, done. So just for those who want to dig into this topic a little bit more, who maybe have listened today and are just it piqued their curiosity or piqued their interest, where could they go to learn more about this topic? Or do you have any book recommendations for a beginner into artificial intelligence and kind of futurist ideas?
So there is a lot. It's very hard to kind of reduce it to just one recommendation. I would suggest follow people who make the news. Go directly to like Twitter profiles of people doing research, running those companies. Follow them, see what they are interested in, what they are saying is happening. That's your best source, because if you just read media account of it, there is always this filtering effect. They kind of modify what is being said. So I think it's always better to go to the source.
Yeah, that's a great point. Speaking of Twitter, I was just poking around on your Twitter, which is people, you guys should follow him. He's very entertaining and very funny. But one of my primary sources going back years and years has been the Future of Humanity Institute. I always recommend that to people. And just now, when I'm looking at your Twitter, it closed its doors permanently. What happened?
I don't have a lot of insider information. My understanding is they were over controlled by the university, so they couldn't accomplish the things they wanted in that framework. So now I think they looking for alternative pathways. We'll still do research. All these people are great, and we'll find jobs and opportunities elsewhere. But it's a bureaucracy, and it's hard to manage a big institute like that.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think you're right. When I first saw that, I was like, this is a major loss. Like, this is where I really started cutting my teeth and like sinking into these. They published 3 papers, but nonetheless, I hope you're right. I hope that group and groups like the one that you've started continue to be supplemented and given money and opportunities to thinkers, because it's very important. But I do have one more question for you, more on the serious side. Do you think there's any realistic hope for a bright future in the long term? I don't mean like millions of years, but in the next 50 to 100, 200, 300 years.
Well, we have to try. We have no choice.
Yeah, I don't know if that answers the
only
question.
Option.
All right, you're right. What else are we going to do? All right. And so finally, in addition to your books, which I strongly recommend, is there anything you'd like to promote or advise before we go?
No, again, just kind of follow the newsmakers, see what's happening. You might be ahead of the curve by a few years.
Yeah, that's great. Dr. Roman Yampolskiy, thank you so much for chatting with us today.
Thank you for inviting me, and some great personal questions I never heard before.
If you enjoy listening to adventure stories, then you should visit thedihedral.com. You will find stories from other members of the community and read about climbing, life, and the outdoors. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Let's connect and climb on.
Climb on!